The Kelrath had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They stood 9 feet tall with scales as hard as steel and 4 powerful arms that could crush stone. Every species they met either bowed to them or died. This was the way of things. This was the natural order. The strong ruled, and the weak served. High Overlord Zoreth sat upon his throne made from the bones of conquered kings. His yellow eyes looked down at the small creatures standing before him. They called themselves humans. They had just discovered faster-than-light travel and stumbled into Kelrath space like lost children wandering into a forest full of wolves. Ambassador Drex stood beside the throne and laughed. The sound echoed through the great hall like thunder. He pointed one of his 4 clawed fingers at the human delegation. "These are the new species?" Drex asked. "They have no claws. No armor. No fangs. What do they eat? Grass?" The Kelrath guards laughed along with their ambassador. The sound filled the massive chamber where 200 conquered species had once begged for mercy. Commander Jack Cole stood at the front of the human group. He was a man in his early 40s with gray at his temples and calm eyes that missed nothing. He did not react to the laughter. He simply watched and listened and remembered everything. Lieutenant Kate Morrison stood beside him. She was the official diplomat, chosen for her sharp mind and steady nerves. She kept her face neutral, even as the Kelrath mocked her people. "We come in peace," Kate said. Her voice was clear and strong. "We wish only to join the galactic community and trade with other species." Zorath leaned forward on his throne. His massive body cast a shadow over the humans like a mountain blocking the sun. "Peace," the High Overlord repeated. The word sounded strange in his deep voice. "The Kelrath do not need peace. We take what we want. We rule what we take. This is the only law that matters." He waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "But you are too weak to be worth conquering, too small to be useful as soldiers, too soft to survive in our minds." Zorath showed his fangs in what might have been a smile. "We will give you the lowest citizenship tier. You may have one colony world. You will stay there and be grateful we let you live." Jack Cole spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but steady. "We accept your terms," he said. "For now." Ambassador Drex stepped closer to Jack. The Kelrath towered over the human by more than 3 feet. His hot breath washed over Jack's face. "For now?" Drex repeated. "You think you have a choice, little creature? You think things will change?" Jack met the alien's yellow eyes without fear. "Everything changes," Jack said simply. "Given enough time." Drex grabbed Jack by the collar and lifted him off the ground with one arm. The other humans stepped forward, but Kelrath guards blocked them with weapons raised. "I could kill you right now," Drex said. "I could crush your skull with one hand. Your bones are like dry twigs." Jack hung in the alien's grip. He did not struggle. He did not beg. "Yes," Jack agreed. "You could." Something in the human's calm response made Drex uncomfortable. He had seen fear in the eyes of 1,000 species. He had heard them scream and plead and cry. But this human just looked at him like he was studying an interesting insect. Drex dropped Jack to the floor and stepped back. "Take your one world," Zorath commanded from his throne. "The planet called New Eden in the outer systems. It is small and cold and far from everything. Perfect for creatures as insignificant as you." Kate Morrison bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, High Overlord. We are grateful for your generosity." The Kelrath laughed again at her words. Grateful, generosity. These humans did not even understand that they had just been given scraps from the table of their betters. As the human delegation was escorted out of the throne room, Jack walked beside Kate. "Did you see everything?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Jack replied. "Their formations have gaps. Their guards are overconfident. They expect everyone to cower, so they never prepare for those who do not." Kate nodded slightly. "And their technology? Advanced but old. They stopped improving it centuries ago. Why would they? No one has ever challenged them." They walked in silence for a moment. "The others will want to know what to do," Kate said. Jack looked back at the massive doors of the throne room closing behind them. "We do what humans have always done," he said. "We watch. We learn. We wait. And when the time is right, We show them what we really are. On the journey back to Earth, Jack stood alone at the observation window of their small ship. He looked out at the stars that the Kelrath claimed to own. Somewhere out there, 200 species lived under the boot of these reptilian tyrants. 200 worlds that had given up hope. Kate joined him at the window. "The Council approved New Eden," she said. "We can begin moving colonists within the year." Jack nodded. "Good. Make sure we send the right people. Engineers, scientists, teachers, people who can build something that lasts. And soldiers?" Jack turned to look at her. "Every human is a soldier when they need to be. That is something the Kelrath will never understand. They think strength is about size and claws and scales." He looked back at the stars. They have no idea what real strength looks like. Back on Kelros Prime, High Overlord Zorath had already forgotten about the humans. They were nothing. Less than nothing. Just another weak species that would serve the Empire until they were used up and thrown away. Ambassador Drex reported to the Overlord that evening. "The humans are settling into New Eden," he said. "They seem happy with their little world." Zorath waved his hand dismissively. "Let them play in the dirt. Within a generation, they will learn their place. They will bow and scrape like all the others." Drex nodded in agreement. "Of course, my Overlord. What else could such weak creatures do?" Neither of them noticed that across the galaxy, in a small colony on a cold world, humans were already beginning to plan. They were studying Kelrath technology, learning Kelrath language, mapping Kelrath weaknesses. The mighty Kelrath had ruled for 12,000 years. They had never met humans before. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years passed since humanity joined the Galactic Dominion. The Kelrath had been right about one thing. Humans spread quickly. But they had been wrong about everything else. New Eden grew from a small colony to a thriving world of 2 million people. But humans did not stay only on New Eden. They were too useful to keep in one place. They became servants and laborers across the Dominion. They cleaned Kelrath homes. They worked in Kelrath factories. They served food in Kelrath restaurants. The Kelrath saw this as proof that humans knew their place. They did not see what was really happening. Captain Sam Drake flew a cargo ship called the Dawn Runner. On paper, he transported goods between Dominion worlds. In truth, he carried much more. Hidden in his cargo holds were supplies for scattered human communities. Medicine, books, communication equipment, hope. Sam landed on a mining moon called Drex 4. The Kelrath had named it after Ambassador Drex, who owned the mining rights. 300 humans worked in the deep tunnels, digging for precious metals that powered Kelrath warships. A young woman named Meg Torres met Sam at the landing pad. She was covered in dust from the mines, but her eyes were bright and sharp. "Did you bring it?" she asked. Sam nodded and handed her a small bag. "Parts for the communication array. Dr. Chen designed it herself. Once you build it, you can talk to any human settlement within 50 light years." Meg held the bag like it contained treasure. "How is the doctor?" "Busy," Sam said. She found something interesting about Kelrath biology. Something that might be useful someday. Meg understood. She did not ask more questions. The less she knew, the less she could reveal if the Kelrath ever caught her. Back on New Eden, Dr. Laura Chen worked in her small laboratory. The Kelrath allowed humans to study science as long as they shared their findings with the Empire. Dr. Chen shared some findings. She kept others secret. Her latest discovery was simple but important. The Kelrath needed a specific mix of gases in their air to breathe properly. Too much oxygen made them slow and confused. Too little nitrogen made them aggressive and careless. Their perfect atmosphere was different from what humans breathed. This information went into a hidden file that only a handful of people could access. Commander Jack Cole was one of those people. Jack had spent 5 years building something the Kelrath could not see. A network of loyal humans spread across 100 worlds. They worked as servants and cleaners and cooks. They listened to conversations. They copied documents. They learned secrets. And in hidden locations on New Eden, Jack trained volunteers in the art of war. Not the Kelrath way of war, which was simple and brutal. Jack taught a different kind of fighting. How to hide. how to strike and disappear, how to turn an enemy's strength against them, how to win when you were smaller and weaker and had fewer weapons. Lieutenant Kate Morrison worked at the Galactic Council as a minor diplomat. The Kelrath barely noticed her. She was just another human, useful for carrying messages and serving drinks at important meetings. They did not notice that Kate remembered every conversation she heard. They did not notice that she had made friends with diplomats from other oppressed species. The Threll, the Varn, the Silken, all of them hated the Kelrath. All of them had given up hope of freedom. Kate gave them something new to think about. Humans are patient, she told Elder Silas of the Threll, a bird-like being with broken wings. We plan. We prepare. And when the time comes, we act together. Silas looked at her with ancient eyes. Many have said such things. All have failed. Kate smiled. None of them were human. The peace, such as it was, broke on a cold morning in the Kelrath year of 7,842. A human transport ship called the Horizon was carrying families to a new colony. 400 people, including 100 children. They had permission to travel. They had done nothing wrong. Warlord Crix did not care. Crix was a Kelrath military commander who hated humans with a passion that surprised even other Kelrath. He believed that allowing humans to spread was a mistake. He wanted to teach them a lesson. His warship intercepted the Horizon in open space. "You are in a restricted zone," Crix announced over the radio. The captain of the Horizon, an old man named Pete Warren, tried to explain that they had permission to travel. He transmitted their documents. He begged for mercy. Crix destroyed the ship with a single shot. 400 humans died in an instant. 100 of them were children. The Kelrath government called it an unfortunate accident. Warlord Crix received no punishment. The matter was closed. Counselor Ben Hayes was the human representative to the Galactic Council. He was a good man who believed in working within the system. He stood before the council and demanded justice. Warlord Crix was there that day. He walked up to Ben Hayes in front of everyone. He struck the human across the face with all four of his hands. Ben fell to the floor, bleeding from his mouth and nose. "This is justice," Crix announced. "Humans should remember their place." No one in the council spoke against him. That night, Jack Cole called a meeting on New Eden. Only a dozen people attended, but they represented human communities across 50 worlds. "The time for waiting is almost over," Jack said. "We have spent 5 years building our strength. We have allies among other species. We have knowledge of Kelrath weaknesses. We have trained fighters on every major world." Sam Drake spoke up. "Almost is not good enough. We need more time." "Time is running out," Kate Morrison replied. "I have heard rumors. The Kelrath are discussing what to do about the human problem. Some want to limit our population. Others want something worse." Dr. Chen nodded. "My sources say the same thing. We may only have months before they act." Jack looked around the room at the faces of people who had become his family over the past 5 years. "Then we prepare for what is coming. We stay hidden. We stay patient. But we make sure that when the moment arrives, we are ready." Across the galaxy, in the Great Palace on Kelros Prime, High Overlord Zorath met with his advisors. "The humans are becoming too numerous," one advisor said. "They are everywhere. They are useful," another argued. "Cheap labor, nothing more." Zorath listened to them argue. He thought about the human he had met 5 years ago. The one with calm eyes who had said everything changes. "Watch them," Zorath commanded. "If they cause trouble, we will remind them why the Kelrath rule the galaxy." He did not know that humans were already watching him, and they were ready. 7 years after first contact, the Kelrath made a decision that would destroy their empire. They just did not know it yet. The announcement came from High Overlord Zorath himself. It was broadcast to every world in the Dominion. "The human population has grown beyond acceptable limits," Zorath declared. "To protect the stability of the empire, we will implement population controls on New Eden. Human breeding will be limited. Those who violate this law will be sterilized." The message was clear. The The Kelrath planned to slowly erase humanity from the galaxy. On the mining planet Vorus, Sergeant Nick Palmer heard the announcement in the deep tunnels where he worked. Nick was a former soldier who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in the Resistance. He pretended to be a simple miner, while secretly organizing the workers. The human miners gathered around him after the broadcast ended. "What do we do?" a young man asked. His name was Carlos, and he had been born on Vorus. He had never seen Earth or New Eden. Nick looked at the faces around him. Dirty. Tired. Scared. But underneath the fear, he saw something else. Anger. "We wait for the signal," Nick said. "It will come soon." Above the mines, Overlord Varn watched the human workers through security cameras. Varn was the Kelrath commander of Vorus. He was known for his cruelty. He had killed 17 human miners in the past year for small mistakes. He enjoyed it. "The insects seem upset," Varn said to his guards. "Good. Fear keeps them working." He did not notice that the camera in Tunnel 7 had been disabled. Meg Torres worked in that tunnel. She had been transferred to Vorus 6 months ago. Officially, she was a repair technician. Unofficially, she was building weapons. The Kelrath did not think humans could be dangerous. They did not search them carefully. They did not worry about the tools Meg carried. This was a mistake. From mining lasers and power cells, Meg had created something new. Small weapons that could be hidden in a pocket. Explosives that looked like rocks. Communication devices that fit inside a tooth. She had armed 200 human miners. The Kelrath had no idea. On New Eden, Commander Jack Cole received a message from Kate Morrison at the Galactic Council. "The vote is tomorrow," Kate reported. "The sterilization program will be approved." There is no doubt. Jack had expected this. He had prepared for it. But hearing the words still made his heart heavy. "How are our allies?" he asked. "Ready," Kate said. "Elder Silas will bring the Threll, the Varn and the Silken will join us. 4 other species have promised support. We will not fight alone." Jack nodded slowly. "Send the signal tonight. It is time." That night, a simple message went out across the galaxy. It traveled through hidden networks that Meg Torres had helped build. It reached human communities on 117 worlds. The message was just 3 words. The sun rises. On Vorus, Nick Palmer received the message on the device hidden in his tooth. He gathered his people in the deep tunnels where the Kelrath cameras could not see. "It is time," he said. "We take the mining complex tonight." Carlos, the young man born on Vorus, raised his hand. "What about the guards?" "There are 200 of them. They have real weapons." Nick smiled. "They have big weapons. We have better ones. We have surprise. We have each other." He looked around at the miners who had become soldiers. "And we have something they will never understand. We are fighting for our future. They are just doing a job." At midnight, the lights in the mining complex went dark. Meg Torres had cut the main power line. The backup generators came on, but they only powered the essential systems. The security cameras stayed dead. The weapon lockers stayed locked. The Kelrath guards stumbled in the dim red emergency lights. They were confused. They were scared. They had never faced an enemy in the dark before. Nick Palmer led the first attack. 50 miners with hidden weapons struck the main guard post. The battle was short and brutal. The Kelrath were stronger, but the humans were faster. They knew the tunnels. They knew where to hide. They knew where to strike. Within an hour, the mining complex belonged to the humans. Overlord Varn tried to escape in his personal shuttle. Carlos shot it down with a weapon Meg had built from mining equipment. The same night, similar uprisings happened on 16 other worlds. On Kelrath Prime, High Overlord Zorath received reports of chaos across his empire. Human slaves were attacking their masters. Mining operations were shutting down. Military bases were under siege. "This is impossible," Zorath roared. "They are insects. They have no weapons. They have no ships." Ambassador Drex stood before the throne, his scales pale with shock. "They had weapons hidden everywhere, my overlord. They had plans. They had allies. The Threll and the Silken are openly supporting them. 5 other species have declared neutrality. Neutrality? Zorath stood from his throne. We rule them. They do not get to be neutral. They say they will not fight against the humans, Drex explained. Some are calling them liberators. Zorath's 4 hands clenched into fists. Then we will destroy them all, send the fleet, burn New Eden to ash, kill every human in the galaxy. On New Eden, Jack Cole stood before the largest gathering of humans since the colony was founded. 3 million people watched him, either in person or through broadcasts. The Kelrath have ruled this galaxy through fear, Jack said. They have crushed every species that stood against them. They believe they are the mightiest beings in the universe. He paused and looked at the faces of his people. They have never faced humanity united. They have never seen what we can do when we fight together. Tonight, we showed them a small taste. Now we will show them everything. The crowd cheered. The sound was like thunder. Kate Morrison stood beside Jack. She watched the crowd with pride. The Kelrath fleet is coming, she said quietly. They want to destroy us. Jack nodded. Let them come. We are not hiding anymore. Far across the galaxy, Elder Silas of the Threll spread his broken wings and addressed his people. For 1,000 years, we have lived in chains. Tonight, the humans have shown us that chains can be broken. Will we let them fight alone? The Threll answered with a war cry that had not been heard in 10 centuries. The revolution had begun, and the Kelrath had no idea how to stop it. The war for the galaxy had truly begun. Admiral Grace Lind stood on the bridge of the human flagship, the Rising Dawn. She was a small woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. Before the revolution, she had been a cargo ship captain. Now she commanded the entire human fleet. It was not a large fleet. 57 ships against the Kelrath armada of over 3,000. But Grace had something the Kelrath did not expect. She had a plan. The enemy fleet is approaching New Eden, her tactical officer reported. They will be in weapons range in 6 hours. Grace studied the display that showed the positions of every ship in the system. They are coming in a standard attack formation, she observed. They expect us to defend the planet directly. That is the logical choice, her first officer said. New Eden is our home. End quote. Grace smiled. The Kelrath always do the logical thing. That is their weakness. They cannot imagine enemies who think differently. She gave her orders. The human fleet did not defend New Eden. Instead, they scattered into the asteroid belt that surrounded the system. They hid among the rocks and waited. The Kelrath fleet arrived expecting a battle. They found nothing. General Torax commanded the Kelrath forces. He was not like other Kelrath leaders. He was old and wise and careful. He did not underestimate his enemies. Something is wrong, Torax said to his officers. The humans are not stupid. They would not abandon their home without reason. Perhaps they fled, a young commander suggested. Perhaps they realized they cannot win. Torax shook his head. No. I met a human once. 7 years ago. A man with calm eyes, who looked at Ambassador Drex like he was studying prey. These creatures do not run. They are planning something. He ordered his fleet to proceed slowly. He sent scout ships ahead. He prepared for tricks, but he did not expect what came next. The human ships emerged from the asteroids all at once, but they did not attack the main fleet. They struck the supply ships at the rear, the fuel tankers, the ammunition carriers, the repair vessels. Within 30 minutes, the Kelrath fleet had lost half its supplies. Grace Lind's voice came over all frequencies. General Torax, your fleet has a long journey home without fuel. I suggest you reconsider your mission. Torax was impressed despite himself. This human understood war better than most Kelrath commanders he had known. You cannot defeat us in direct combat, Torax replied. You have only delayed the inevitable. We do not need to defeat you in direct combat, Grace said. We only need to make victory cost more than you can afford. The battle around New Eden lasted for 3 days. The humans never fought directly. They struck and vanished. They led Kelrath ships into asteroid fields where they crashed. They used small fighters that the Kelrath weapons could not track. When Torax finally withdrew his fleet, he had lost 400 ships. The humans had lost 12. On the ground, the war was equally brutal. Major Danny Ruiz led the human ground forces. He had grown up on a farm before becoming a soldier. He knew how to work hard and how to wait for the right moment. His first mission was to liberate the human colony on Brennan's world. The Kelrath had taken 5,000 humans hostage after the uprising began. They threatened to kill them all unless the resistance surrendered. Danny did not negotiate. His team landed at night in small pods that the Kelrath sensors could not detect. They moved through the darkness like ghosts. They freed the hostages before the Kelrath even knew they were there. The next morning, the Kelrath commander woke up to find his prisoners gone and his weapons destroyed. Danny left a message painted on the wall of the Kelrath barracks. "We do not leave our people behind." Back on New Eden, Ryan Cole worked day and night in the shipyards. He was Jack's younger brother, and he had inherited their family's gift for making things. Ryan had designed the human warships. They were smaller than Kelrath vessels but faster and more nimble. They could change direction instantly. They could hide in places the Kelrath could not follow. But Ryan's greatest invention was something simpler. Dr. Chen had discovered that Kelrath needed specific air to breathe properly. Ryan built missiles that carried gas mixtures designed to confuse and disorient the enemy. One hit could turn a Kelrath crew into stumbling, confused targets. The Kelrath had never faced chemical warfare before. They had no defense against it. As months passed, the tide of war began to turn. The Human Alliance, as they now called themselves, grew stronger. Elder Silas brought 10,000 Threll warriors to fight alongside the humans. The Silken provided ships and supplies. 3 more species joined the alliance. General Torax warned High Overlord Zorath that they were losing. "These humans are unlike any enemy we have faced," Torax said. "They do not fight like warriors. They fight like hunters. Patient, clever, relentless." Zorath slammed his 4 fists on his throne. "Then we will use our greatest weapon. Prepare the World Killer." Torax froze. "My overlord, that weapon has not been used in 8,000 years. It destroys entire planets." "That is the point," Zorath growled. "We will destroy New Eden. Without their homeworld, the humans will lose hope. They will surrender." The World Killer was an ancient weapon built during the first Kelrath conquests. It could crack a planet in half with a single shot. Nothing could stop it. The massive weapon moved toward New Eden with an escort of 500 warships. Grace Lynn received the report from her scouts. "They are bringing the World Killer," she told Jack and the other leaders. "They want to destroy our home." Jack's face was grim but determined. "Then we stop them." "How long do we have?" 4 days. Jack looked around the room at the faces of people who had fought so hard and come so far. 4 days to save our world. Let us get to work. The human fleet gathered every ship they had. The allied species sent what they could spare. It was still not enough to defeat the Kelrath escort fleet directly. So Grace Lynn did something unexpected. She split her fleet into 3 groups. The first would attack the escort from the front. The second would strike from below. The third, led by Grace herself, would fly directly at the World Killer. "This is a suicide mission," her first officer said. Grace shook her head. "It is a sacrifice. There is a difference. We do this so our children can live." The Battle of New Eden was the largest space battle in galactic history. The human fleet attacked with everything they had. Ships exploded like stars going nova. Pilots flew into enemy vessels when their weapons failed. Medics fought beside soldiers. Grace Lynn's ship, the Rising Dawn, took 17 direct hits on its way to the World Killer. Half her crew was dead. The engines were failing, but she reached her target. "Ram the weapon," she ordered. "All power to the shields." The Rising Dawn crashed into the World Killer at full speed. The ancient weapon exploded in a flash of light visible across the star system. Grace Lynn died, saving her world. But New Eden survived, and the Kelrath learned something they had never believed possible. They could lose. The destruction of the World Killer changed everything. For 12,000 years, the Kelrath had been invincible. Every species in the galaxy knew this. It was simply a fact of life, like gravity or the cold of space. The Kelrath conquered. The Kelrath ruled. The Kelrath could not be defeated. Now that fact was broken. Species that had been neutral joined the human alliance. Worlds that had accepted Kelrath rule began to rebel. Even some Kelrath commanders started to question their leaders. General Torax stood before High Overlord Zorath in the Great Throne Room. "We are losing, my overlord," Torax said. "Our supply lines are cut. Our fleet is scattered. The humans and their allies control more than half the outer systems." Zorath rose from his throne of bones. His yellow eyes burned with fury. "We have ruled for 12,000 years. We have crushed 100 rebellions. We are the Kelrath. Yes, my overlord. But we have never faced an enemy like this. They do not fight for land or treasure. They fight because they believe in something. What could insects believe in that matters?" Torax was silent for a moment. "Freedom, my overlord. They believe in freedom." The final campaign began 6 months later. The Human Alliance fleet, now grown to over 2,000 ships, approached Kelros Prime. Commander Jack Cole stood on the bridge of the new flagship, named the Grace Lynn in honor of the admiral who had saved New Eden. Beside him stood Kate Morrison, Nick Palmer, Danny Ruiz, Meg Torres, and Elder Silas. The leaders of the revolution had gathered for the final battle. "The Kelrath still have 1,500 ships defending their homeworld," the tactical officer reported, "plus orbital stations and ground batteries." Jack studied the display. "What about their morale?" Nick Palmer, who had spent years among the enemy, answered, "Broken. Half their commanders want to surrender. The other half are fighting each other for power. Zorath has executed 17 generals for failure in the past month." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we give them one chance to end this peacefully." He opened a channel to the Kelrath fleet. "This is Commander Jack Cole of the Human Alliance. High Overlord Zorath, I am offering you the chance to surrender with dignity. Your people will not be harmed. Your culture will be preserved. But your empire is over. The age of Kelrath rule has ended." There was silence for a long moment. Then Zorath's voice roared across the channel. "Surrender? To insects? To vermin? I will tear you apart with my own hands. I will mount your skull in my throne room. The Kelrath will never bow to lesser creatures." Jack sighed. "I had to try." He closed the channel and gave the order. "All ships, attack." The Battle of Kelros Prime was the bloodiest fight in the history of the galaxy. The Kelrath fought with the desperation of cornered animals. They knew that defeat meant the end of everything they had built. They threw every ship, every weapon, every soldier into the battle. But the Alliance had learned from years of war. They used tactics the Kelrath could not counter. They worked together as one force, humans and Threll and Silken, and a dozen other species fighting side by side. Danny Ruiz led the ground assault on the capital city. His soldiers landed in the middle of the night, striking the defensive positions before the Kelrath knew they were there. Nick Palmer's team breached the outer walls of the Imperial Palace. Meg Torres disabled the security systems with devices she had built herself. By dawn, the Kelrath defenses were crumbling. Jack Cole walked through the broken gates of the palace with a small team of soldiers. The great hall where he had stood 7 years ago, where he had been mocked and dismissed as a weak creature, was now filled with smoke and rubble. High Overlord Zorath waited for him on the throne of bones. The Kelrath ruler was wounded. One of his 4 arms hung useless at his side. His scales were cracked and bleeding. But he still stood tall, still defiant. "So the insect comes to claim his prize," Zorath said. Jack stopped a few meters from the throne. He was older now, with more gray in his hair and lines on his face that came from years of war. But his eyes were still calm. "It did not have to end this way," Jack said. "We only wanted to be treated as equals. We would have been your allies, not your enemies." Zorath laughed, though the sound was hollow. "Equals? You are small. You are soft. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. How could such weak creatures ever be our equals?" Jack thought about the question. He thought about all the humans who had fought and died. About Grace Lynn, who had crashed her ship into the World Killer. About the miners on Vorus who had risen up with homemade weapons. About the families who had kept hoping even when hope seemed foolish. You never understood us, Jack said finally. You saw our soft skin and thought we were weak. You saw our small size and thought we were helpless. You saw us working as your servants and thought we were broken. He stepped closer to the throne. But our softness means we feel things deeply. Our size means we learn to think instead of just fight. Our service gave us time to study you, to learn your weaknesses, to plan our freedom. Zorath glared at him. Pretty words, but you still had to fight. You still had to kill. You are no different from us. No, Jack said. We are very different. We fight for each other. You fight over each other. We build alliances. You build empires on fear. That is why you lost. The Kelrath tried to rise from his throne, but his wounds were too severe. He fell back against the bones of his predecessors. What will you do with us? Zorath asked. Enslave us as we enslaved others? Exterminate us as I wanted to exterminate you? Jack shook his head. We will do something you never could. We will forgive. Not forget, but forgive. Your people will have a place in the new galaxy. They will be equals, not rulers. They will learn that cooperation is stronger than domination. Zorath stared at him for a long moment. You really mean it, he said at last. You really believe this? Yes. The High Overlord closed his yellow eyes. Then perhaps you deserve to rule. We never could have shown such mercy to our defeated enemies. The surrender came an hour later. The Kelrath Empire, which had lasted 12,000 years, officially ended. 1 month later, a new galactic council gathered on a space station built in neutral territory. Representatives from 50 species came together to create a new government. Kate Morrison stood before them to give the opening address. The same woman who had been beaten and humiliated at the old council now spoke as the voice of the Alliance. We did not seek power, she said. We did not want a throne. We only asked to be treated as equals. When that was denied, we rose. When we were attacked, we defended ourselves. When our friends were threatened, we stood with them. She looked around the chamber at the faces of so many different species. Let this be the lesson of humanity. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never assume that the small cannot become mighty. And never forget that the greatest strength of all is not the power to destroy, but the courage to build something better. The applause lasted for a long time. Jack Cole stood at the back of the chamber, watching. He was tired. He had been fighting for 7 years. He had lost friends. He had made impossible choices. He had done things that would haunt him forever. But it was over now, and something new was beginning. Kate found him after the ceremony. What will you do now? She asked. Jack looked out the window at the stars. I want to go home, he said. To New Eden. To plant a garden and watch things grow, instead of watching them burn. Kate nodded. You earned it. We all did. They stood together in silence, watching the galaxy they had helped to free. 7 years ago, the Kelrath had laughed at the small, soft creatures called humans. They had given them a cold world at the edge of nowhere. They had been certain that the mighty would rule forever. They had been wrong. And now, for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy was free.